What's up, everybody? We're out here with another episode of Go the Mission. And today we got it's a special episode, a little something different that we're doing here. The background for this is actually a project that me and my friend here, I'll introduce him in just a moment, are doing for a class. And the idea is to talk about a social issue that's going on today and trying to see if there's anything that we've learned that can help us to solve that problem, or to at least make a better example of how to deal with the issue in our world today. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And before we go any further, I want to introduce my man, Denard Fenaud. What's up, my man? Welcome to the podcast.
Sure. I'm in the building. I'm grateful to be here with you, and thank you for having me.
All right. Of course, man. Just tell us a little bit about what you're doing, what you're studying here, just a little bit.
All right. First and foremost, I definitely want to make sure that everyone knows that my favorite fruit is a cucumber. So that is what I'm trying to give the message, which is the cucumber is the most profitable fruit that you will find. 95% water retention, but you can use it to make your skin look good. And that's what I believe the gospel is, and that's what I'm here to do as well. I'm here to mix and hopefully balance out my social work degree and my theology degree to help make some practical use to people where they can actually not just look better, feel better, and also have a better relationship with Christ.
Yes, man, this guy, he's got the answers for health. If you need any assistance, just reach out. I'll put you in touch. Just a phone call away, guys, just a phone call away. So once again, I am your host, Corey Johnson. Missions is my passion, and I am thankful, as always, for another opportunity to educate, enlighten, and encourage those of you who are interested in missions. It doesn't matter if this is your first time listening or not. Like, subscribe, and share this with anybody, so we can continue to get the mission out there. And of course, don't forget that the podcast will be available on all podcast platforms, and you can catch a video edition on YouTube. So you can also see I'm repping the sponsor today, Where Jesus Is. Get your merch, get your gear. They got hoodies right now too. So if you're getting cold outside, like it is here in Berrien Springs, you'll be good to go. All right. Now, before we jump in, we're kind of titling this loosely, Mission, Service, and Racism.
Yeah.
And it's, I guess right off the top, it might seem like an odd combination, right? Yeah. Mission, service, and then racism.
Yeah.
But we're trying to see if there's maybe a connection between missions and service and the existence of racism, and if missions and service can do something to help benefit or help diminish racism. So before we get into some of the details here, I just want to ask a question. How would you define racism? And let's just go with that. How would you define it?
I think that's a great question. And if you allow me, my definition comes from the book, So You Want to Talk About Race. And how the author defines racism, is one, the first definition is any prejudice on an individual basis against someone in regards to their race. But she also uses a second definition which builds upon that. So you do have this individual racism against a person, prejudice against a person based on their race, but it's then exacerbated or supported by the systems that actually leverage power. So there you have an individual and also a structural one.
I see.
But I think for my definition and my working definition here, I think it's important that we have an understanding of both.
Okay. How would you say that you've seen those definitions play out in society today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I can't divorce it from the fact that I come from a lived experience of, I define myself as Haitian American. I have roots from Lago Nave, Haiti, where my parents actually came as immigrants, now American citizens. But I come from a low socioeconomic status. The joke from my city is simply this, that Fort Pierce, we have one stop sign, one stoplight. That's how small it is. But the point that I'm trying to make is I was raised on food stamps. Fort Pierce was the world to me. And so how I saw it played out is such as this. On my bus stop, I saw more liquor stores than I saw convenience stores, right? And then I saw more convenience stores and liquor stores than I saw churches.
Wow.
So it plays out that way, and then it's more historical as well. So this was just my generation, but from what I understood in the area that I'm from, it's been that way. So we've come accustomed.
Wow. And that's powerful to hear that. And you think about growing up under those circumstances and then coming to a place like this and then seeing the things that this country has gone through, especially in this year.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, can we catch a break? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And almost as troubling as the events that wrong people are some of the methods that people take in response as well.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people trying to do their part to help make things better. But what we're trying to explore here is there a better way?
Yeah.
Is there a more Christian way about going about solving these issues and trying to see if everyone can be a part of the solution?
Well said.
So you mentioned history there, and there's something that I wanted to just pick your mind about, because when we go way back in history, from the biblical perspective, we have Israel, right? And they were God's chosen people, and they also had some issues with mission service and racism.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think I want to start with, shout out to Dr. Hux, one of our professors. In his class, basically the church and social issues, I read probably one of my favorite books during my wilderness experience here in Boring Springs.
Boring is true.
Yeah. I think the author highlights this, and then I will take it from the perspective of Israel. He says in the writing, basically, in regards to addressing this, he says history is never antiquated because humanity is always fundamentally the same. It is always hungry for bread, sweaty for labor, struggling to wrest from nature, and hostile man enough to feed its children. The welfare of the mass is always at odds with the selfish force of the strong.
Wow.
So for me, I think when I look at ancient Israel, I also look at present day modern sense of Israel, where you have this, although it's communal, you have these individuals that want a type of God, but they also are estranging themselves from their neighbors, you know? And then you also see how they typically extradite people that don't look like them, that have what they would call sin, like differently abled. We know the stories of the lepers and things of that nature. So in all, what I do see is a semblance of what's happening now. People with maladies, infirmities, treated differently, less access to the sanctuary per se, whether the sanctuary is the hospital, the church. And so that's what I would say. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, it does. And there's something you said in there I found really interesting. You mentioned how there's this innate need of the human for community, and yet there's also something in us that is seeking to push away almost as many people as possible just because they're different than us. Yes. That's so counter-cultural.
Yeah.
That's so deep. I never thought about it from that perspective, but it's 100% spot on. And, you know, when I look at Israel in particular back then, I think that point is so key about what you made back then compared to now. A lot of people, like, we take some principles from biblical things and we say, okay, those are things that we can use right now. And a lot of those things end up getting spiritualized or kind of like theoreticized or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there's a practical aspect of what happened back then that is still very practical in its complete application today.
Well said.
And when it comes to that communal aspect of it, that's huge. That's huge. Oh, man. And, you know, for another class of mine, it was on the sanctuary, but we had to do a project I was just doing yesterday on a particular article or ministry in the sanctuary. I chose the lampstand because of how it represents mission, right? And the point that I was trying to get at is God was trying to say, let there be light to his people from the beginning. First words he had spoken in the Bible, right? And he illustrated that through the lampstand in the sanctuary. And while Israel focused on all the other aspects of what was going on in the sanctuary, oh man, they were there daily, consistently offering the sacrifices, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But they missed out on the big purpose of the lampstand.
Wow.
And as a result, what happened? Captivity. But once they got back, they rebuilt everything else, and they got back into the habit of looking for the salvation, looking to be free from sin, but forgetting that the lampstand is an integral. It wasn't just there to give light so they could see what was going on inside there. It was more than that.
That's good.
It was more than that, you know? And God's mission of let there be light was something that he wanted his people to join in with.
Yeah.
And when you look at Israel's exclusivity when it came to the message and the gospel they had, they didn't want to share it. Samaritans, outcasts, nah. You know, but we can see the result of what happened to them as a result of not sharing. So Israel, they have the same mission as we have today. Yeah. And we've seen in the past how they fell as a result of that. You know, how do we look at that and how do we make the adjustments today? I'm not sure. What do you think about that?
That's a great question. I just want to flip something to you, if I may.
Sure.
I know it's your podcast, but I don't care. I'm going to take
No
control
problem.
over. But I'm interested in regards to this, your aptitude and passion for mission.
Sure.
When you look at all of this and you have this understanding theologically and where we're at currently, how do you keep that passion going?
Oh, man. Man, that's a good question. There's so many things popping into my head. I don't know where to start, but I'll try to start with this. When I look at the gospel commission, go. That's what this podcast is based off of, the idea of go.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to go and teach all nations. When I look out today at all nations, I see a lot of people who don't have the good news. And, you know, I guess I'm kind of exposing myself here. I always said I never wanted to be a pastor. And even though I'm here in the seminary, I still have zero intention on being a pastor.
It's all good.
Like, I'm here to be a missionary, you know what I'm saying? And for me, it's like, I love working with people who don't think the same way that I do. I prefer to talk with people who don't think the same way that I do and don't believe the same way that I do. And I owe, of course, a lot of that to my mission experience and even canvassing. I mean, every day it's a matter of going out and finding people who are just different than you, but finding a common ground so that Jesus can be relatable to them. And one of the struggles that I had that really made the idea of missions even more intriguing to me, it happened when I went back to Palau as a Bible teacher. I started out with my curriculum set. I had all my plans laid out for the year of all the stuff I was going to teach. And within a few months, I realized it wasn't going to work.
Wow.
Like, everything that I was trying to teach from my understanding was going right over the heads of the students. Half of them were sleeping in class. No one was interested. And I was thinking to myself, I don't get it. This is a message that's supposed to go out to everyone, right? But I didn't realize that there was some tailoring that needed to be done based on those different people. And so the question came in, if Jesus is somebody who can make a difference for everybody, there's got to be something about each and every person, regardless of their background, culture, religion, that Jesus resonates with them. There's got to be a place where it intersects. And so what it meant was I had to get to know the people more. And then as I learned more about them, I was like, oh, shoot, this is it. That's the connection. Boom. And I found out where something in the life of Jesus could apply to them right there. And all of a sudden, they're hooked. And they're interested. So once I saw that, I was like, oh man, I feel like through life, learning is one of the things that I used to hate. Now I love. And when it comes to mission, it's even bigger because I realize with the more that I learn how little I know. You know, that's one of the biggest things that I get is, man, there's like nothing I know. But it's exciting when it comes to mission because I realize, wait a second. How many different cultures are there out there? How many different religions are there out there? So how many different ways can this gospel that I find dear reach out and intersect with all these others out there? There is a way. It's just a matter of putting myself in a position to get to know those people so I can find that connection. And that's exciting to me.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And if I may answer the question that you asked, I think the cheap cliche speaks volumes. And also, thanks for sharing, man. I'm still trying to process everything you said. That was deep. That was deep. I do want to say conceptually, like you highlighted something that, in regards to the cheap cliche, that the history always repeats itself, right? In regards to ancient Israel and them knowing the message, but not actually making the message palatable. And then also there's this sense of they took ownership of it, but they never empowered others with it, right?
Yes.
And so for me, I think when I look at all these elements and history repeating itself, and what you just said, like contextualizing it, we cannot divorce the ideal of like these nomads, these people that, right now what's coming to my mind is this, because what you said, I didn't like learning, now I like learning, but it happened after you experience people in different places,
Yes.
right? There's this Nigerian proverb that says, I'm oversimplifying it, but it says, travel is the best part of education, right? So what it says, we can't divorce from us learning about ourselves, learning about others, but also we can't remain in that same place, right?
That's
And
deep.
I think
That's deep.
ancient Israel, they were traveling, they were traveling physically, but mentally remaining stagnant.
Ooh,
yeah.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. We should preach that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope that answers the question. So I do find myself sometimes in paralysis when I'm looking at our current situations, and like the Ahmaud Arbery's, the Philando Castile, the Breonna Taylors, and I don't want to get too politically correct here, right? But I just do look at these situations and I'm like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's such a great point. And it goes right into what I was thinking to ask next, oddly enough. When we look at the birth of our church and then how situations were early on in the church, we've got these lessons in the past. Speaking of traveling through time, right, but staying mentally in the same place, that's incredible to me that it happened. But yeah, there were issues with racism in the early church.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I want to contextualize it even to where some of the work, shout out to Dr. Carol Hunt and also VP Michael Nixon. They've labored and they've used the aspect of the resources that's here in the seminary and also at Andrews to showcase how, like, even talking to the first theological Black African American that came into our seminary, how he describes his experience then is almost similar to what we're experiencing now.
Wow.
And that's the sad truth, I would say. And then also with our church, I think what we see is two things. We see the lack of response or the type of response, and so what I'm now seeing is that we want to, and it's almost like the evangelical movement, like we want to focus on the prophetic aspect of it, or we want to focus on the second advent, Jesus coming, and we want to divorce ourselves with the suffering of those that are around us, and
The practical aspect gets diminished.
Yeah. So I would say, as an individual, I want to make this very clear. Baldwin talks about when you love something, you should be able to scrutinize it. And so I'm scrutinizing our church simply because it's a direct correlation to the level of love that I have for it. I believe that not only do we have a message, I believe that we have a purpose, and I believe that we're mission oriented. However, I believe that we're missing the mark. And how we're missing the mark is we're failing to recognize that when there is suffering, one person suffering is too many.
Yes.
That I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And, you think of Jesus and his sacrifice. He came for it. Like, if there was only one person that accepted him, for him, it would have been worth it. And that mentality is something that I don't think we embody as well as we could today.
Yeah.
And there was something that came into mind. You mentioned politically correct, and I have to say this. I am never for being politically correct.
Okay. Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Like, I don't, woke is whack. Like, that's my thoughts on that. And I think cancel culture needs to get canceled. Those are my thoughts.
Break it down. Break it down.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's too much in society now that people can't take that criticism, like you're mentioning, right? It's an objective right, and it should be something we look forward to see how we can improve in different areas. We can't afford to move through time progressively and yet stay in the same place progressively. Like that, it doesn't make any sense. We have to be willing to adapt and to adjust and to look and see how we can improve on the things we're doing. Otherwise, we're not getting anywhere.
Well said.
You know,
well said.
We're trying to get out of those times right there by doing the same things. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's a story example that came up. I was thinking about early church history. You have Edson White. And when I think about people being not politically correct, not caring about what other people were saying was the right stuff to do, he pops into mind.
Yeah.
You know, the Morning Star and going down and being willing to minister to the black population of the South. What can you tell us about that experience and how you view that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Not only was he a trailblazer and also a pioneer in his own rights, but I want to just make this clear. You cannot have any spread of any religious influence without converts, right? And so I think just conceptually, that is something that we need to understand, acknowledge, and also experience. And so on one side, when we look, and shout out to Dr. Toscano, you know, for his course, because we read a book, it gave us a snapshot, the brief history of the Seventh-day Adventists. And in that book highlighted this story where he went even past his own expectations.
Yeah.
You know, and so where my thoughts actually land is the implication on moving beyond your own sense of comfortability, you know, to not just teach but learn.
Yes.
Yeah. So hopefully and I think that correlates to that whole concept of traveling but not remaining the same.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, very much so. I feel like that's the essence of it right there. And there are several other aspects that we could look at. For the sake of time, we can't go into all of them. But that is just one of them. And you highlighted the thing that stands out to me the most. Getting beyond your comfort zone and where you think, like, just serving ourselves, really. That's what it is. Staying in your comfort zone is really just being self-serving, guys. That's what it is.
Deep.
You know, I can't say it any better than that. And when we look at the lack of the mission and response today, granted, we're Adventists, and I rep this to the fullest, of course.
Hey. But
I don't remember hearing Adventism make a statement about anything that happened this year. Do you?
So that's a good question, and let me say it this way. So I think we've historically, at this point within the 21st century, we're used to making statements per se, statements that, going back to your point, that make us feel good. You know, like, we're sad that you've been wronged, but it's not transformative language. So there has been statements that, shout out to the Theological Seminary here at Andrews, we've made, and I believe that was the statement that started to help restore some hope for me.
Okay.
Like, not only did we address it theologically, you know, that these wrongs are wrongs, these evils are the things that we as lamplighters should actually be exposing, because now they've overexposed us, right? And then there's also been, from the general conference level, there's been some statements put out there, and also on the conference levels. But here's where I think the issue falls short is, how do you tell a mother, like right now, because of COVID-19, the implications, we've all been thrust into something involuntarily. How do you tell a person where their unemployment is less than what they made when they were working, right? Or where, unfortunately, because of that, they're forced to put themselves in a precarious situation, right? And they're still wanting to, and no one at their church is reaching out to them, you know? So not only are they isolated, but there's not the sense of concern. And I think we've made statements, but we're not concerned to the point that has moved us where we used to describe ourselves as the hands and feet, you know? And so now what that movement and that action-oriented arm looks like may be different for everyone. And I want to paint a broad stroke. Sometimes the action might just be reaching out and saying to someone, I wish I could hug you right now. or it can be like not more than just I'm sorry. I'm leveraging the power that you have, and the influence that you have to move the needle in a direction. And if I can highlight, going back historically, our first organizational wise, our first structure that we used that I believe that was profound in addressing some of these issues is our Benevolence Fund, which today we term as the Poor Fund, but in some churches, but in even using that, we can say that I want to address the fact that we've made statements against things, and then we've also exacerbated the issue by some of the statements that we've made by labeling certain things.
Good point. Yeah.
And so I think we need to do something in regards to this and action. We need to not just look at what's happening in the world, but we also need to say the word racism as a church and also say, how have we exacerbated the issue ourselves?
Oh man, that's such a good point. I think it's easy for how do I say it? I feel like over the past several months, I've been coming back to this word disconnect, right? And to me, there's like a disconnect in what we say we do and what we say God has the ability to do, but then we're afraid to talk about some of those things. Like, we have to be willing to get down and dirty with these things and to wrestle with it so that we can come out victorious from it. We can't, like you said, statements are good.
Yeah.
But mostly for us because they help us to feel good.
Yeah. Self-serving. Yep.
If it doesn't actually lead to, like you said, the influence to move the needle or to motivate people in action to do something, then it's not really that great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, oh man, that's deep. That's deep right there. When I think of Jesus and his example, he shatters all of that.
Yeah.
Because when you think of someone who was absolutely no regard for what was politically correct, he didn't care what anyone was saying that was, oh, you're doing this and doing that. Oh, you were picking, grain in the field? Well, here's why I'm doing it. How about that?
Yeah.
Like he wasn't trying to suck up to anybody. He wasn't trying to make anybody feel good, so to speak, about different opinions. If something was right, he would say it. If something was wrong, he would call it out. Like he just took things for what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And the beautiful thing about that is that even though it's painful for people to hear at times, that's how you can get to the reality of a situation, and then you can build something up from there.
Yeah.
It levels the playing field when everyone's willing to get real.
Well said.
And when it comes to us as Adventists, we have to be willing to get real so we can start and then build things back up.
Yeah, yeah. And I now I do want to ask you a question. Let me see if I can actually, because I'm an external processor, so I'm thinking this through. So just give me a second.
Sure.
Because when you used, and I think this is so powerful. I want to go back to what you said, because I believe mission is at the core of all of this, right? Because there's this, you really highlighted when you talked about Jesus, and I want to say that there's an implication on political correctness that I want to talk about too. So I do want to start here first. He has, like what you said, and not being concerned about how people feel. I think what my takeaway from what you said is so powerful. He wasn't as concerned as how the feel good, but do good.
Yes.
And that's where that go concept, like, it's action oriented. Like it's an emphatic command for us to do, right? Oh, we don't want to go back into the Greek or the the original language.
Oh no.
But oh no, please, oh no. But I think now, going back to this whole concept of being real, because here's my question for you. Like, let's just be honest. Right now, let's take the gloves off per se, right? How do I say this? And the silence might be what is my difficulty right now. And when we make statements, right, is the silence is deafening. But here's what my issue is when we talk about being real.
Yes.
For some people, that is their real self. Not speaking up. Not remaining in the status quo, right? And so, how do we? Are you concerned as an individual, and I'm saying, can you speak for yourself here? Not necessarily for the association to the SDA church.
Sure.
But how do you feel about people that are feeling like they're doing good, but creating meaningful harm? You know,
Ooh.
and I can give an example. Like, let's say for someone like you see that there's this group of people that want food, like in your mind. So you just go and give food, right? However, one, you're telling them to come to you at a specific time, you know, and not recognizing that they can't because they have to work 2 jobs. And then 2, you're giving them food that are actually like like pass me down, stuff that no one else wants, you know, and then the last thing is you give food and you turn away. Like, that's the last we see of you, and you want to take pictures. So like, they're doing good. You get what I'm saying? But it creates meaningful harm.
Yeah.
To the community and also to the message, or ultimately.
Yes.
So how do you ensure that we do good, but also make sure that we do not create meaningful harm?
Man, that's a really good question, and I think it's interesting that you mentioned food. The example that popped in my mind was something I got to participate just a few weeks ago. It was a Sabbath afternoon, and I actually happen to be the president of the missions club here. So,
hey, okay.
You know, out here doing
With
a little
the title. Shout out to the missions club.
Yeah, man, shout out. And it was really cool. Like, this group, they're excited to do things, and I love that. Yeah. Like, with COVID, it's interesting trying to figure out what to do, but we all in our conversations were like, man, we're getting just antsy not doing it. We want to do something.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I said, well, hey, what can we figure out to do? And we got put in contact with Berean SDA Church.
Yeah.
That's where Professor Dr. Sedlacek, he goes down there and he serves there. And so we got to go down there, and the ministry that we were doing was just going out, looking, like literally driving around looking for the homeless communities, and we were bringing them food.
Amen.
And the coolest thing about the food was these were meals. I remember going down, we got there at a certain time, but we ended up getting out into the streets late because we were waiting on the food. They were cooking the food. Like, they were preparing the food, like they're on the spot, preparing the dishes and everything like that. Go down, grab a crate full and bring them upstairs. Okay, now we got enough. Okay, we'll go.
Wow.
So we got like these meals been prepared. Like, oh man, like
hot. Fresh.
I had eaten before I got there, but if I hadn't, I probably would have tried to sneak one myself. You know, it was some good looking food. I can't lie. And it was cool. Like, we would go and we would find a group of people who were in need, and we'd share with them. But it didn't stop there to deal with the meaningless harm part or meaningful harm. We had these pamphlets, and we had different ministries that were addressed on the pamphlets, and we were saying, hey, you know, here's where we're from. This church is like right around the corner.
That's good.
So if you're able to link up, and so there was a sense of continuity there. Like, yeah, you see us here and we're doing this for you, but this isn't the last that you should see of us. We hope to see you again because we understand that there are other issues that you may have to deal with, and we're here to help you with that.
That's good.
And the thing I appreciate about this church is that I've never been there for a church service, mind you. This is my first interaction with them. But the thing I appreciate about it is they do this once a month.
Yeah.
So it's a consistent thing, a consistent presence that they have in the community. I remember just watching some of their elders and the pastor speaking with some of the homeless people, and they're just having a normal conversation. He's like, so where are the other communities? Oh, yeah, so it's over here and blah, blah, you go this way, da, da. And they're having a normal conversation about how to help track down other people in need. Yeah. And I loved that.
That's good.
And, you know, it was not warm that day. And I'm not a fan of the cold, but there's something just energizing about being able to do that. And I told, after we finished and came back, I told all the people that participated, like, whoa, I felt like alive. I felt charged up in a way that I had not felt the entire semester.
Wow.
Just from doing it. We were only out there for a couple hours. It wasn't even that long. It wasn't that deep, you know.
Wow.
But just to be able to participate in something like that and do something where we're not only saying, all right, I'm going to drop this in your lap and then I'll disappear. But no, here's something, and we want to be able to give more.
That's good.
That's good. That was life-giving, man.
That's good. Thanks for sharing. And I hear some themes emerging from what you said that actually moves the needle and move us forward too. I hear the theme because what you talked to me earlier about and us about is the fact that you were challenged by the disconnect, right, that we've had. But what you're saying is that we went and we did the go action aspect of it, but we also saying that we want to not just connect you, but we want to be connected to you.
Yes.
Right. And so I think this is, for me, this is very meaningful as a social worker, and shout out to actually Pastor Hunter and also Dr.
That's right.
Davis.
That's right.
Yeah. Shout out. They're doing huge work there in South Bend. And the reason why I'm also loving that is because one of my first jobs actually was in St. Joseph County, which is Mishawaka, South Bend area.
Okay.
And one of the things you have to do, and also previous commissioner Dr. Davis talks about actually just sometimes going to the cemeteries and seeing the history and also the pain. You see the underlying issues why this person died so early, and then we can also see how the local community is corralling against it with it, to help offset and bridge the gaps as well. So I'm actually excited that you all are doing that, because in social work, that's essentially what we seek to do. We seek to work ourselves out of a job so people can actually achieve their optimal life, And that's where I also believe there's intersectionality with the gospel.
Yes.
Because and I might get a little preachy here, but
Go for it, man.
I unfortunately really think about how Jesus, and I love EGW, shout out to EGW, how she talks about it and the amount of blessings, how Jesus was deeply acquainted with our sorrows and our sufferings, so much so, going back to your point, when you talked about you felt alive, and the theologian Pedro Gautama has this concept of coming alive. Well, I'm taking over this podcast, y'all. But the final point that I want to highlight is this aspect of coming alive, in dead places. Yeah. That's good. Let's bring that.
Go ahead.
And Jesus did just that. He substituted for our suffering, our aspect to come alive. But woe to us that have been given, extended this grace, that now we are contributing to death.
Wow.
And so I love what you said when you said you come alive, because it gave, even though you don't like the cold, it gave you this sense of warmth. Doing
Very
for
much
others,
so.
do for you. And I just give a shout out to Dr. Darren Morton, who talks about live more happy, and he just talks about there is evidence that's out there. Did you know this, bro? Like when you yawn, typically in a room, what happens? Someone else is yawning.
Else.
Right. And I've shared this with our seminary. I'm giving shout outs to everybody. The seminary student forum, I shared this with them as one of our fit breaks, that yawning is a sign of compassion. That's simple, right? Where you share in someone's suffering. This class is boring, and won't say no names or titles, but here's the reality.
Don't do it to
them. I won't. But I want to land this point. It's like, and I want to see about your journey, honestly, and I'm getting a little serious here and emotional, but like in your journey, how has helping someone else helped you?
Oh man.
And is there a specific example outside of the one that you shared? Because I know you've done a lot, and I'm just very curious now, because now you're giving this to more people by this podcast, and I really appreciate this opportunity. But now I'm actually interested in how has this changed your view of God, and reinforced it.
Oh man, like missions. In short, missions is everything to me. Like I grew up in an Adventist home. I had all the right education. Went to Adventist elementary school, Adventist high school, Adventist college. Any question you wanted to ask me, I knew it. When it came to Bible bowls, I would win because I had the right answer for everything. I was the fastest one when it came to Bible sword drills. But there was no practical application on my life. I knew that I was doing a lot of whats, but I didn't have a why.
Wow.
And the mission aspect was the why. I didn't figure that out until after I actually graduated my undergrad with a business degree I knew I was never going to use. But I said, at least let me say I got a degree. Okay, cool, I got a degree. But I had no intention of using it, so I said, well, why not go overseas and serve as a missionary? And the cool thing about that is the summer before, right, that would have been right before my senior year, I had gotten to do canvassing for the first time. And the reason I went to do canvassing was because I didn't believe if God was real.
Oh, wow.
So I went there to challenge God to show himself to me.
Wow.
Once and for all, I was saying, this is it. Like, if you're real, okay, I'll roll with that. And if not, but I'm not going to toe the line anymore. It's going to be one or the other. So going into my senior year, at least I knew God was real, but I was still trying to explore the reality and the application of all the stuff that I had learned in the past, right? So I go out to Palau to serve, and it's crazy because I thought I was going there to give something to the people. In my limited state and with whatever limited knowledge I had, I thought that I was going there to be the server, right?
Yeah.
The people of Palau did more for me than I could have ever done for them in that first year.
Wow.
All right? And that's just in year one. And I look back at my mentality during that year, and I was very self-serving while I was out there supposed to be serving.
Wow.
Just to be honest. And I came back from that, and it was a cool experience. I knew that there was something there I connected with. The people, the students, great. But there was just something that just stuck in the back of my mind. I was like, man, I got to go back. I ended up, it was 2010 to 2011, my first year there. For the next 4 years, I actually was able to continue working in canvassing, which was nice, getting to meet different people and continuing to serve in different capacities here and there. Something was building up, right?
Yeah.
But eventually it got to the point where the opportunity came for me to return to Palau in 2015. Now, I signed up for a 2-year contract this time, and I went out with a completely different mentality than I did the first time. At first it was, I think I know everything, let me go change the world because that's what I'm supposed to do as a Christian. This time it was, I don't know how much I can give, but I'm going to try to give until I can't give anymore.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
You know, it was a limitless, like whatever's inside, I'm going to test the limits and see how much I can give.
That's good.
So signed up for 2 years and went out there, had the experience with these students, and like I just felt like there was more and more, and I would get tired. There were a lot of things that happened to me that it was tiring doing the things I was doing and the amount of things I was doing. But for as tired as I would get, there was always more I could give.
Wow.
Like it never stopped.
That's deep.
And
That's deep.
You know, it got to the point my 2-year contract was going to expire, and I said 2 years is not enough. I'm going to sign up for 2 more. So I did. And even going through that time, it was just more of the same. Like, there's more I can give. There's more I can do. Can I do this? Okay, cool. Let me do it. And whatever I could do for those students, whatever I could do for those people, I was going to do. And it got me like so much to the point when it was time to leave. By the time I left, I was like, man, I felt at home there. And I tell everybody this, like, I feel more at home in Palau than I do anywhere else in the world, even in my own house here in America.
Wow.
Like, I feel more at home there. And I think a lot of that has to do with the mission and actual service. Not only what I was able to give, which is so little compared to what they were able to do for me, but that exchange and that understanding and appreciation of the differences in culture and how, you know what, there is a way for us all. And I say differences in culture. It's not just Palauans and Americans that go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people from Bangladesh. There's a lot of people from Korea, China, Japan, Australia, the Philippines. Like there's so many different cultures that are there, and we get to interact with all of them within the school system.
Wow.
So, you know, when it comes to like now finding the way that Jesus intersects, as I mentioned before, with all of these different backgrounds, and it's so cool to see everybody be on the same page with that. And that brings life to me. And those, it still goes, even though I've returned now, those relationships are still very much alive with all my students. I was just talking with my Plown mom this morning. She messaged a group of us that were all her sponsor kids there. And, you know, it's just, it was like 6 some in the morning too. I wasn't really trying to be awake, but I don't get to talk to her often. So I was like, yo, man, I can be awake for this. It's okay.
Oh, that's what's up.
And it's just like there's something feeling about that connection, and not even knowing that I made an impact, but in knowing that God could use that little bit that I had to give to do something cool.
Yeah.
Like it's just cool, and being able to communicate with everyone still today. But when I think about, getting back to the main question after all of that, when I think about how missions, like the impact that it has on me, I realized that without serving others, everything else that I believe is useless.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter how much I can gain for myself if I'm not willing to share it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, that's what it comes down to. And that's why, from this point forward, that's what I'm trying to be about.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, man, I got to bring this theological perspective of this self-serving. It reminds me of Isaiah 58, where contextually Jesus is speaking to the chosen group. And
that's such a good passage.
Yeah, and he describes the type of fast that they're doing, which is more gluttonous, self-serving, and kind of like this whole look at me instead of imagine he who has done, right? And his response to them was, it's a rebuke, but it's also a go, right?
Yeah.
He then says to them that had I not, and he brings them back to why he came, but why they're there, right? Because you remember when he talks about the Spirit is upon me, to break the yoke,
yes,
to free the oppressed. And then he reminds them this as well. And he then says to them that you're the repairers of the breach, and these breaches are those that are oppressed, the widowers, the orphans, those that are hungry.
Yes.
And I get to this place and I also recognize the connection to us as Sabbatarians, right? Which is Exodus 20, verse 8. Where I've seen, especially I was raised in a French Seventh-day Adventist church. Like when we did our doxology and everything, we would stand up and repeat these things. First and foremost, I don't speak conversational French, but all my scriptures are in French. And so my theological understanding was first based in French. So now when I have like more understanding and see theology or the seminary as a tool for advancing the gospel, I now recognize the Sabbath is also that too. It's a tool for advocacy, because what does it call? It calls all to rest.
Yes.
The neighbors that you are ostracizing, right? But also what I love is for those that are in touch with the ecosystem and understand God's creation, he also calls the animals to rest,
Wow.
And so I realized that the two are not mutually exclusive. Like it goes back to what you said. God is literally saying through the Sabbath day, go.
Wow.
That changed my paradigm, because what I wanted to do on the Sabbath day was rest.
Or stay.
Like that would be excuse me, that's a proper word, to stay. But what he's saying is rest a while in me, so you can actually, the palpitations of your heart can beat for the things that I suffered for. And now you can suffer with me with.
Wow.
To change, because your heart now will move in compassion for these things. So I just wanted to share that.
Yo, I love it. I love it, man. I'm getting chills just hearing you talk about that and share that, man. I appreciate that. When I look at where we've kind of come back full circle to where we are today, and we've even started talking about or hinting at some of the things that can help be a solution.
Yes.
How would you summarize some of the things that you believe can really help us to make an impact today in dealing with racism through missions and service?
Great question. First and foremost, I think we need to do some, honestly, like with social work, we talk about the aspect of acknowledging your own bias, and that takes work. That takes either having a sounding board like yourself, or going to therapy, you know, or actually understanding that the people that love you the most will tell you the things that they strongly dislike about you, that are indicators, litmus indicators of things that not only that they are seeking for you to change, but God may be wanting you to change, right? And so there's this. I want to go back to this whole part of racism. Conceptually, there's an individual side, and then there's also this the systems of power that enforce the individual to leverage power against somebody solely because of race. So then the same way we must have this individual journey, but there's also a collective journey. And what you is describing by your Palauan mom, and shout out to you as well.
Bilu.
What's the name?
Bilu.
Oh, I like the name. I like the name.
She's the queen.
Hey. Yeah, I heard you call her that. I was like, okay. But the reality, because like even when we talk about it, it brings a smile to our face, right? It's free. So there's community in that, right? Community where there's a home away from home. So how do we do that? We need to also acknowledge the historical and contextual drivers of these systems of inequity, right? That requires us to look at someone that can't pay their rent and they're in school to say, okay, we shouldn't be asking them to just pay their rent. We should be offsetting it. You know,
yes.
We should be looking how to remove them out of arrears. You know, that might be looking like something in the church where we might have to think, and I believe we serve the creator of creativity. So we're not limited, and we may be limited in what we can do in it of ourselves, but we're not limited to think of what we can do with Christ.
Yes,
right?
I love that point.
And so I think we can think more creatively and think outside of the box, but also think in the box to move people outside of the box, right? And so one way I think we can also look into like practical things, grant writing, because a lot of this is coaxed in the economics of it.
True.
You know? And so we have to remove the financial barriers, you know? We also need to, there's an education and awareness piece, right? I think we should shift the Sabbath school lessons to not just be self-serving, but to also be empowering.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So like
That's
one model I suggested to one of our pastors in the Southeastern Conference in Florida is to shift regular, what we'll call divine service, the hour where everyone should come, to Sabbath school, where Sabbath school, everyone is taught on how to reach and teach, but they're also learning.
Like discipling.
That's the word. That's the word. So in the end, I think there's with missions, there's also, and I think you hit on it, this aspect of discipleship. So I want to throw the same question back to you. Like, what are some things that you think we can do to move forward? And I'm interested in the things that you're doing. How do we get involved in those things? Like the missions club, you know, how does one even get an opportunity to sit in this seat to be on your podcast? I know you're closing out, but I just want to say again, like, I think this has been an awesome opportunity for one to get an exclusive more about your story. Because all I know is this muscle bound person that smiles all the time, like, and that dude's gymnastics. But now I'm hearing your heart too. So I'm curious to see, like, from your experience, how do we move this needle forward, but also inject Christ, right?
Man, that's a great question right there. That's, I think, the struggle. There is an aspect of, unfortunately, trying to make missions and service appealing.
Say more.
Like, in certain environments, people are more bent towards doing things a certain way because they think that's the way it's supposed to go, and they're less open to something that they feel doesn't benefit them. Unfortunately, university is one of those areas. You know, oftentimes the 4-year degree is what we're here to do, and anything else that doesn't get us from point A to point B, and as far as that goal, becomes unnecessary. But before it's a university, it's an Adventist university.
Well said.
You know,
well said.
So that means mission and this heart for service and all of that stuff that we've been talking about are at the core before the university side of things. I think from the top down, that message needs to be put out there and reminded, for one. Like, it can't be, I should never hear that a professor is telling a student, you don't have time to go serve because it's going to mess up your graduation track. If we're hearing, or if we're the ones telling those messages, we've got it backwards.
Well said.
Like, everything that we do here in a sense of a degree should fit into our sense of mission. There's ways that engineers can be missionaries. There's ways that doctors, medical people, social workers, pastors, educators. There's ways that each and every single one can be a missionary. But if that component is left out of the sanctuary,
come on now,
then we end up focusing on all the other stuff and just trying to get from point A to point B. I made my sacrifice, so I'm good. Instead of realizing what the purpose is for that. Like, is my goal for getting a job so that I can pay the bills, or is it so that I can reach other people?
Yeah.
And that message, I think, is kind of confused sometimes, or not really, I don't know the word. It's not eloquent. I don't think that's a word, but it's not really dictated clear enough. So people are confused, and they think that they're coming to school to get jobs so that they can have a career. You know? Especially in Adventist education. So that's one thing. Now, on the ground level, it's up to us, people in my position, being a part of the Missions Club, to give opportunities and to bring awareness that these things are going on. Like you said, people are drawn towards community. And whether they realize it or not, they may not have done it before, but people love service and they love doing things for other people. Why do you think Christmas is such a big holiday? People love to give as much as they love to receive. They know this, right? But it comes down to accessibility and awareness. If people don't know that there are things going on here on our campus that they can be participating in, they're probably not going to be inclined to go out looking for it themselves. So we have to be very diligent in promoting it and continuing to put out there. For example, when we did the outreach with the church a few weeks back, we put up videos on,
I saw it.
All over the place, sharing our experience. And that's kind of what we need to do. There's an email list, probably 100 plus people on there. Maybe only 5 or 6 people respond, but they're all getting those messages. So especially taking advantage of the technology we have today to try to reach as many people as possible. There's a top-down aspect of it, and letting them know that, hey, this is a big part of what we do. And then there's the ground level part saying, all right, now that you know it's what we do, here's how you can get involved. So both of those things working together and ultimately reminding people why we're here. Like, we are not here to serve ourselves. And when I try to serve myself and people who look like me, guess what? I'm contributing to racism. When I don't have any interest in serving other people, or I feel like my whole life's mission is to serve myself, I'm contributing to the problem. So helping people to realize that being politically correct doesn't mean that I can only do right by somebody who looks like me. You can do right by anybody because it's right. Doesn't matter what they look like. Doesn't matter where they come from. Doesn't matter what they believe. We do right by people because it's right. That's how we break down this concept of trying to be politically correct, trying to stay woke and the cancel culture. Oh, you're why would you go there? What? You want to be a missionary? Oh, you want to serve? No, that's a waste of time. No. Cancel all that. All of that mentality needs to get canceled, because that's not what it's about. And once we can get past that and bring the level of understanding that's needed, I think we'll be moving in the right direction.
That was good. I should have been writing notes.
It's deep. All right. We got to record it, man. It'll be available. So I don't know if you had any other questions, but we're getting down to the end here, and well, let me ask you this first. Any final questions? Any final words?
Oh no. I'm good. I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and thank you again. This was awesome, bro.
Yeah, man. This is one of the most fun conversations I've had in a while, so I got to thank you for being willing to do this. just so you listeners know, we weren't even planning on doing this. We were actually both trying to do the project on our own.
Yeah, that's true.
And then we got called out by our professor. So again, shout out Toscano for making this possible.
Yeah, shout out.
Because I think I don't know what I was gonna do like by myself, but I do feel like us coming together is gonna have a much bigger impact than anything I was gonna do on my own. So I'm excited to see, how far this goes. And, even if one person, as you mentioned, is impacted positively by our conversation here, then it's worth it. Yeah. That's what it's all about.
And I think you just hit home on the actual message. Like, we intended on doing this on our own.
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that. I think that's the message. Like, but look at how intentional God was, because you and I never decided on being here at this time. But in the end, here it is. A project is made out of our lived experience. We're sharing it. And we were also on the same basketball team, not knowing, like we're sharing spaces, but we're not actually living in those spaces together.
Wow.
Right. So I think this project is a altruistic affirmation of, y'all see I'm using big words. Yeah. No, but honestly, in the truest sense, this project really called us. And shout out to Dr. Ross, because she talks about what you talked about, this cancel culture, like calling people out. She says that we need to call people in, and I think that's what Jesus is telling us to do too.
Yes.
We need to go, and call people into relationship with him.
I like that.
And so I think, going to your point, I'm reiterating what you're saying. Like, I don't know. Well, I do know now. I could not have done this on my own, because I didn't have this equipment set up. Shout out to Corey for having the setup, and shout out to the fire shirt as well. I'm just thankful, man, because like the end goal message was what you said. Like, yes, you can do by yourself, but you can do so much better together.
Yes.
And so I'm just thankful for this opportunity. And my prayer is that people will see this and they will not get caught up in the gimmicks of mission.
Yes.
They'll recognize that there are people dying, but there's also people that are thirsting. And it reminds me of my devotional scripture today that I took time. Shout out to Denard doing time in devotion. I ain't no fake Christian, but Psalm 63. On all seriousness, the psalmist David, and while he's actually a fugitive, being sought out for his life, he starts off by saying, "God, you are my God. Early and earnestly I will seek for you in a place," catch this, "where no water can be found, in a dry and thirsty land." But then he says, and I'm coming to your point, because I think you highlighted something about the sanctuary so profound. He says, "But I see your power and your glory in the sanctuary."
Wow.
And I'll just leave it at that. I'll leave it at that, bro.
Wow.
When you talked about that lampstand, yeah, bro, full circle, man. So thank you so much, man.
Man, God is good, man. I get chills just being involved in moments like this, man.
Yeah, man, yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, God is good. And hey, I want to thank all of you listening as well for, taking a journey with us as we go through this project. And I'm sure it'll be a blessing for you, and hopefully it can be some great encouragement for you as you ponder your next steps moving forward. Just want to thank you for listening to another edition of Go the Mission. Once again, this is your host, Corey Johnson. And again, it doesn't matter what platform you're tuning in on. Like, subscribe, and share so we can get the message out there. And if you have any questions about missions, this is the practical part for you guys listening right now. Let me know. Send me a message. If you got access to the podcast, you got access to me. Send me a message, send me an email, and we'll get you in the loop. My email is gothemission@gmail.com, or feel free to drop a comment or a message through social media or YouTube. And finally, remember, to exist, it's not enough. We out here to be out here. Until next time, peace.